Hello everyone, Professor Kurzlook here. So on Tuesday we made a video about Kentucky's 4th District and the quite interesting race between Thomas Massie and Ed Gallrein. So we know that Ed Gallrein won, but there are some interesting results when we look at the data. First, it wasn't nearly as close as the polls said it was going to be. When we looked at public polling up until the day of the election, they were pretty much neck and neck. Gallrein in many polls had a 2 to 3% lead, but that was within the margin of error. But instead, Ed Gallrein ended up winning about 55 to 45% of the vote. So kind of surprising such a big electoral victory. In fact, it was called much earlier in the night than I thought it was going to be. So that's one interesting tidbit, and that kind of raises an interesting question about public polling and how much faith we should put in public polling. I'm going to make a longer video about that here over the next couple of days, what public polling is, and then sometimes why maybe it gets it so wrong. So what I thought was really interesting beyond that about the race was just when we look at the age breakdown and who voted for who. When we look at voters between 18 and 29, Thomas Massie was projected to win about 82% of the young vote. Between 18 and 29, about 82%. That's a huge amount for the young vote. When we look at 30 to 44, Massie had about 70 to 30% projected vote total. When we look at voters from 45 to 64, it was much closer, about 50 to 50. But when we look at voters 65 and older, Thomas Massie only had about 38% of the vote, while Ed Gallrein had about 62, 61% of the vote. So this is an interesting phenomenon because we see a clear age divide. And this isn't the only election. We see this relatively clear age divide. So when we think about, okay, well, what does this mean for electoral politics? One is who is reliably coming out to vote. And we know from this race and other races that an older electorate is more likely to come out and consistently vote. So although the young vote went one particular way, there just weren't enough young people to the polls voting for Thomas Massie to allow Thomas Massie to win. And that's an interesting phenomenon that we might see in other races as well. Thank you.